Yo, what's up guys? Another Siege video, and it's been quite a while since I did a Siege video. It's been before I went on holidays actually, so that's definitely been a while. I've been using a few of these teams that I normally don't really use. I pulled a bunch of new units, both LD5s but also a bunch of LD4s, so those are definitely interesting as well. This team, if you happen to have it, well, I would say Lima's pretty replaceable by just a Wusa, but it's very nice if your Cassandra moves in front, because with Cassandra moving in front, you can keep the immunity uptime, so that's pretty nice. These teams are also not that hard. You could say like, oh, Odin kind of counters a Sonya, but you can also just kill it twice, and then it's a relatively easy cleanup where this team still works very well. I did pull my third Adriana recently, so I could actually use, because I have two Sonyas, I don't have a third Sonya, but I do have a Water Siri, which I actually never used. So I could do the same team with this as a Water Siri as well, because a Water Siri in this position would be as good as a Sonya. Maybe even better. I would actually say even better because of the Clara. So that's definitely a unit I will be using in the future as well. Also, let me know what kind of teams you are using with a Water Siri. I think most of them will be Adriana based. So this team is definitely a little bit of a longer fight. I wanted to use my light pony here. I would still say that a, what's it called? A water pony might actually do better. The main thing about this team is just that the Seimei is so good against Giselles, because the Giselle just has a 1-turn immunity instead of 2 turns, and that is just insanely huge. Plus all of those armor breaks, plus attack breaks and all of that kind of stuff. They will get removed for a big time healing. Seimei healing is actually really insane. Seimei for siege offense is really good. Besides that, still really boring units. I'm gonna speed up this fight a little bit. It's just Bolvric and stuff. Bolvric trying to survive. I would say that it's better mainly for the Amelia, because then you have a more sophisticated tank on just the Seimei, because Seimei you just build damage. You don't even want Seimei to take turns pretty much. And in this case, it was a little bit wonky for the amount of damage that Byunjo plus a Giselle can do. I would still say that Byunjo Giselle is one of the better defense out there. Not really sure if I like it with the combination of the more. I think there's better combinations than that out there. But yeah, in the end, still very strong defense, and Destroy definitely kicking in. That's definitely something. If you build this thing on defense, definitely make sure your Byunjo is on Destroy, because if you're going to be slow hit, then this is definitely the way that you could maybe still get a victory. But in this case, I took the victory. Next hit, very typical hit. Started the record a little late. But in this case, we do see a whole bunch of Byunjos still. There's always going to be a lot of Byunjos out there. But in this case, we have the Belial team. And the Belial team is pretty good against Carcano in the first place, because it has the ignore glancing thingy. So even if it was in the state over there, would have been fine. And then the thing with a Byunjo will never be able to kill a Camilla. So even if my Windy was fully dead at this position, it would have still been fine. And you just build the Windy, of course, as tanky as possible. The shields, of course, Carcano doesn't give a shit about. But you just make sure you kill the Carcano first. And from there, it's relatively easy cleanup. And the Byunjo, it just takes a little bit of time. It's not really that hard or anything. The Byunjo will keep critting on Camilla, which literally doesn't do anything for that reason. That's the thing with Byunjo. It's very strong for certain things, but it's also somewhat weak against certain other things where you do know it's going to crit and you know what it's going to crit on. So for that reason, this team definitely still works out a lot, and definitely recommend the team that if you don't have it built yet, you probably should look into building it, because it just works very well. Then a team I've been using quite some. Actually, since the Tower of Spires thing came out, it's been a little bit more annoying, because for the Tower of Spires thing, I had to use the Dark Homunculus. So I had to switch it around back and forth. Thing that you have to keep in mind, Ian is pretty hard to get good damage to, especially on that first hit. Like a 39k on a Thessarion is probably just off edge of killing. In this case, I did do damage based on wind, I think, because that second one was the 70k. Of course, it does have that attack buff in the second round. But yeah, it's mainly like, okay, the difficulty of can you kill that first unit in the first round, where you only do like about a 40k. And that is a 40k on pretty good runes for an Ian. So he looks pretty OP, but it's kind of still a tricky unit. This is actually a team I can start running right now, because I have a second Dark Robo. I mostly use the Dark Robo together with the Nephthys team. And with the Maximilian team, I was always using the Amber. So those units were locked out in different teams. But as you've maybe seen on a previous video, I used the Maximilian team in a different one, which I will also use later over here. So I don't need an Amber for that. Plus I have a second Dark Robo, which actually enables me to do this team. And this team is just very nice, shit ton of dots, especially on those... You only want to use this on teams that don't really have healing, but they just die to a shit ton of dots. And this is absolutely a very nice team to pick up if you have those 3 units. And this is, of course, the team that I need that second Dark Robo for. It is sometimes a little bit tricky if there is full immunity, but I also ran a Dark Robo on Vio for a bit, so mainly when I do know I can outspeed them, pretty much guaranteed I can run that. The only issue is, in this case, there was a more, so it was like, okay, maybe I should actually just focus more on the damage. Or not on the damage, more on the speed, put it on Swift. I think in this case it was Swift. But yeah, it's just a pretty nice setup team. I still kind of want to look for something to replace the Farad, but I've been thinking about like the Dark Assassin and a few other units, but in the end, Farad was still the better one, until I'll probably get a Talisman. Then we have this one, which is that new team with Maximilian that I've been using right now. You can just simply put Galleon on the Maximilian spot, in all honesty. I think it will do pretty much the same, maybe even better. But this is just a lot of damage. Okay, in this case, we didn't get the pushback. But since there is Armor Break branding right now, this skill, 29k on the Byonjo, Armor Break branding. So the Tiana is super boosted because of the branding plus Armor Break. So that makes this team very solid. Even when there's no pushback, of course, with a pushback, it would be a lot better. But with the, yeah, it's just Armor Break branding makes Tiana do an insane amount of damage. So then we have this fight, similar fighters that we showed at the start. In this case, I do tend to put my, if I use RTA kind of units, I do tend to put the whole RTA set that is, or just normally on RTA, on these units over here. Did that in this case for this monkey as well, and that's where, you know, there's like a 121 efficient monkey, and he can tank quite a bit, he can slap pretty hard. Moment you kill the Carcano, match is over. They don't have too much healing, and even if he goes for that state, you can still do like a decent amount of damage. It's also one of those teams, if Byonjo goes for 1 skill 3, he's immediately full stacked, so that makes things pretty easy. And we have the main damage dealer that can't actually be interacted by the Sylvia, which does help out quite a bit as well. Plus, just Hey Gang Riley is always strong. Hey Gang Riley X is always very strong. You could put the Tessarion in there. You could put an Amber in there that's very strong. A Monkey in this position. Monkey's only good because of the Celia, I would say. Otherwise, the other units would maybe do better. Thing is, where you don't really want to put a Amber is if something strips out of order and then your Amber might move into full immunity. You have to be careful with those. But besides that, it's pretty solid to put an Amber in this team as well. If there's just like, let's say, a Dark Series Savannah and then a Tessarion, or if there is something like a Clara, Savannah, and then another unit that just deals damage, then it's definitely one of those teams where you could say like, okay, an Amber would actually clean up that whole house pretty well. But you could also just use it. You don't even need the Riley for that. You can also just use the Fire Hacker, Hey Gang, and that kind of stuff. So I would definitely say in current situation, Hey Gang is definitely one of those units you could keep multiple off, and he doesn't necessarily need skill ups to do good. Of course, it is recommended to use skill ups, but then one of those hits that I normally never really did, which was hitting Dark Series because I didn't have a Kinky. But as of recently, I actually pulled this Kinky, and I was like, oh, I can actually use this. Because the weird thing is, I never had a Kinky, I never had a Huadam, and then the moment I pulled, well, there was more of the Huadam than the Kinky. I have 1 Kinky right now still, but I pulled from 0 Huadams to 3 Huadams within a month. And then I'm also playing the alt account for, say, Lucifer. That account already has 2 Huadams as well. So I went from 0 Huadams to 5 Huadams pulled in a month after like 9 years of playing, which is like, what, why? But yeah, definitely Kinky, it is nerfed on the skill 1, but it's still insanely strong for siege offense, because this team, the only 2 things they can actually focus, well, you have the Kiki, or that can, or not the Kiki, the Kiklet that can make it RNG for what it's focusing. But the Dark unit in general will focus that Kinky, and then there's just, it just doesn't do too much damage. The Vigor can do some damage, but it's hitting a Raccoon that's super tanky, so definitely one of those bruiser fights in net force. Kinkies are still very strong for offense, and they still do a lot of damage. You still have that armor break potential. Skill 1 into skill 2 still does a lot of damage. We've also seen that at, for example, SWEL, that Kinky still, even though the nerf, you have that proc potential of just getting an insane hard hit in, where it's still used in RTA as well. And definitely also a unit I ruined up for RTA, will be using RTA. It is very strong with like the Nefties and the Maximilian combination because you have that AoE armor break already set up. So definitely will be a unit I will be utilizing there as well. Of course, it's not as good as like the prime time where it was super hard to kill and it was killing everything, but still a pretty solid unit right there. And that is already the 10th hit. So hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you want me to do more Siege videos, and see you as always in the next one. Thanks for watching. If you would like to see more guides, join the Discord and check out the content tab, which has the dungeon guide archive and the video guide archive, which contains all of the guides that you need. Hope to see you there.